Welcome, Tony. Tonight, we're going to review the economic development and resilient chapter and the environment community service chapter of the general plan. Jake sent out copies of this section of the general plan to be reviewed tonight along with his comments. So I'll turn this over to Jake and further discussion.
Great.
Okay.
So this is economy and environment.
Five and six.
Want numbers?
5 and 6. Page 68, 57. And in front.
Oh,
page
mine's at home.
Page 105 in the back.
There you go. All right. So we're not talking housing. That was included just because of being on the same page. So this first page, is under implementation.
Page 105.
Yeah. This is page 105, looking at what's down here. Corner there. And tonight there's a lot of material to go through, but we don't have to hit all the details. Anything spelling or things that are right, just email me and I'll add it to what I get. And after this month, we have one more chapter, Parks and Rec. So after November, I'm gonna take everything and send it to the consultant group that did this. That I'm loose on updating the whole. So economic development projects, consider options to promote new commercial and mixed use opportunities to develop in a clustered area. Such, creating a redevelopment RDA with incentives for particular uses. I said that should be 2 sentences, explain what this program is. Oh, the SB one, what's the next one?
Yeah, it is.
SB 65, explore the use of SB 65 to collect funds for economic development and infrastructure projects throughout the city. So this is like focused mostly on, sorry. Should have known that. This is focused mostly on projects. What projects in terms of implementation should the city be doing? And then the second one, tourism project, encourage recreation, supply and outfitters to locate within Morgan, develop marketing / advertising plans directed at the Wasatch Front. Any thoughts on projects or capital improvement kind of things that the city should focus on?
First question is, do we have anything in the works right now? In the city? Tony? Do you know? Yeah.
Bridge,
You did say capital improvement projects.
Yeah,
as
these
well,
are like,
right?
And the only thing I can think of that comes to mind that maybe is in line with what you're talking about now is the subject of a rec center come up a couple of times in that meeting the other night. So, it's just we just threw it out there.
okay, I'm gonna make a note here. That would go in the Parks and Rec chapter, but I'm just gonna make a note here, explore rec center
Yeah,
feasibility. At this point, I think that's the most appropriate is explore. my city, Farmington, built a rec center without pools, because pools are an expensive part. $5 million was done about 10 years ago. It's a great facility. And obviously, that'd be more today, but it's pretty impressive what they did with 5 million. As you could do 6 or 8 basketball courts or 10 pickleball. I mean, you can do all kinds of things inside. It's got a track.
One of the things that Denise and I, we go to lots of shows and stuff. And it seems like these amphitheaters, that once you have one, that people love coming and performing at them. And like the one in Layton, I don't know if you've ever been to any
I've
of
been
the
there,
shows
yep.
there. They're fantastic.
How would the city like to partner with the library on a small amphitheater on my front lawn right over here?
I think an amphitheater would.
Petitioning for
because
that for a
you
while.
have local talent and they just kind of, I know Layton City has a full slate, and if you
do.
go around to different cities, they have a lot of acts that come there. And I think that would be a huge draw to
That's
get people from other cities to come up here and see Morgan, because you have something like this, and we really enjoy it. And it has a few seats, but then it's just grass for people to sit on. You've been there before, and
Yeah,
it's
Ed
nice.
Kenley.
Yeah,
I imagine they have an advertising deal, which helps pay for it. They
Ed
had some
Kinley,
really big acts this year.
yeah,
Uh,
they're awesome.
Big acts.
No, I think that's fantastic. I think there is a vibrant arts community in Morgan that really struggles with finding a venue, finding places to perform. And it would also be a big tourism draw.
It'd just be summer months, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I made a note outdoor because
Tony?
that's gonna be a
Yeah,
lot cheaper.
I might make a point, Aaron, that there was at one time a stage over at Riverside Park.
There were some design problems there.
Yeah, that, absolutely. But there was a stage at Riverside Park at one time.
Mhm.
For a few summers, we tried movies at the park. We probably did that for what, Mayor, 3 or 4 years.
True.
Originally, I think it started out as pretty successful.
Was it COVID that put an end to that, or was it lack of
No,
interest?
I think what, I'm not sure about the movies but it ended before COVID. So
Yeah, and then, and just to let you know on those, we ended up doing it. And at first, the first year, we were slowly gaining. Then we had about 2 years that were really successful. And then the 4th year, it started declining. So we did do a concert in the park instead and didn't get enough turnout. And then, you know, economic wise, it was done by staff. And so we didn't actually have support like Layton does, or grants or community involvement. It was city staff doing all the projects. So it kind of a little harder to do and
To
no
build the
money.
Program, for
But it,
sure.
but it is a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.
There's a lot of,
That's an advantage of an outdoor space as opposed to an indoor auditorium, is that if it's not in use, it's still kind
Larry
of a
Engel
gathering
started the
space.
movie in the park, yeah.
Part of the park over.
Yeah.
And the
road.
nice thing there is you have that grass berm. And so it's not terribly expensive, and people just come and just kind of sit next to your neighbors. And I think one of the keys to those kinds of things is how it's managed, because the little towns and cities, they always have a group of people that can get their feelings hurt really easily, you know, that, well, we want to perform. And I think that would be the hardest thing, Tony.
You were right. You said it might, because I talked too much. I'm going to defer to Mayor Little again on this one. Mayor, in the back of my mind, ex-mayor, did we not at one time buy a portable stage? Was that the city that purchased that?
We still have it. It's available. We have a portable stage.
Yeah, well, I remember purchasing a portable stage. But you know, it's portable, but I mean, we do have that at our disposal. So,
That's good to know.
but I mean, I can think of a lot of little communities that have, I mean, we was down to Midvale and they have a nice little, well, that's not a little community, I understand that, but they have a nice little amphitheater. And then a lot of the towns also have little, you know,
Well, we did a tour in Bountiful with Jake, he took us over to an area that it's not a splash pad. What do you call it? I mean, anyway, it's a,
The ring, it's a ribbon, it's a skating ribbon. So in the winter, it's ice skating, and in the summer, it's like roller skating.
yeah, and then their splash pad. Yeah, their
Yep.
splash pad was a water feature, so it's more like waterfalls to play in. And then they had a small amphitheater. I think it was fantastic. But yeah, what do you think, Jake? Was it a quarter acre?
It's probably an acre.
An acre?
It's one
They
of the
have a
best.
lot of grassy area too.
It has. What a,
Giving people somewhere to go.
and I,
My bookkeeper does the payroll for Black Island Farms. You should go plant corn.
Yeah.
This place prints money for 2 months. It's ridiculous. It is
Talk to-
nuts how much money those things. Oh, way more.
talked,
They stopped farming over it.
talk to Jed Clark someday. And then one other quick comment. One of the things I do get feedback on quite often and is that many people will comment to me, we just don't have anything here for the young people. And, you know, and so that's kind of, I guess, maybe something to consider, but in my day, it was Como. You know, right, Mark and Ray, you know, but yeah, and we had the movie theater, right? 15 cents for a 15 cents for an orange soda.
There's no movie theater now.
We digress here, but I just point that, I just make that comment. Well, I do get that comment quite often is we just don't have a lot for our youth. So
Okay.
moving forward, I suppose that's something to think about.
All right, there's a little, go visit, next time you're in Bountiful, go there. Best ice cream in the state is in Bountiful. So hopefully I didn't offend anybody here. Okay, a question, this actually gets in a little bit later. Is there a Chamber of Commerce in Morgan City?
Yes,
Is it successful? Okay,
very successful the last few years.
I didn't see that mentioned in here, so maybe let's keep in mind how the city can support them. We're gonna come back to environment and public, but while we're on, let's actually just come back. We'll do environment and public services together. That'll be Lance's time to shine. Okay, so this is the one goal of in the general plan under implementation. And then there's 4 policies. Increase the city's tax base to prevent significant hikes to property taxes. That's the big one.
Expound on that just a bit.
Well, I didn't write it, but I would say, yep, page 109, and the goal idea there is that with retail sales tax or a good commercial property that the city has enough revenue coming in that they don't have to property tax all the residents, single family. That commercial property tax, retail sales tax, maybe utility or franchising fees or other things would pay for that.
I got a comment on the retail tax and stuff. I've seen in the last 15 years around me and in Layton, what I call being short-sighted as the city has cost them tons and tons of money. Example, Costco wanted to be where Winco was, but they wanted some concessions, right? Nope. So they moved down to Farmington, same thing with Farmington Station, but just where my store is, something really simple that would have increased my revenue, would have increased the revenue of this whole strip mall, and exposure would have went crazy. This is what I mean by short-sighted. There was an old Mexican restaurant where Del Taco is, if you know where I'm at. I'm right in Layton on Main. And then there's a Kentucky Fried Chicken right there. They went to the city and says, listen, so we don't have to incur impact fees. Can we just say that we're just remodeling this building move it to the back of that parking lot, make a big open U-shaped parking and have exposure for everybody. Absolutely not. So they remodeled it and it is what it is right now. It hasn't changed in 16 years. I think as the city, I look at everything from the business end of things. And as a city, we really need to be really open-minded and look 10 years. I mean, you could never told me I'd be where I'm at for 16 years. I've been there 16 years, paying rent, doing my thing. And so how different would my store be? How much more revenue would I pay in sales tax? There wouldn't be any open locations. It would just be a whole different, and that is just talking about this development is looking at things differently a little bit. And upfront, yeah, we're not going to collect right now, but maybe. I think that's one of the keys is we're trying to build out the city here a little bit in the next few years. And I think that's one of my opinion is the biggest thing is to look down that road a ways.
Business friendly policies.
In the last, what, five years, Mayor, you can correct me when I misspeak here, ex-mayor Little. One of the major projects we did over on Commercial Street was we did a lot of work on water sewer lines. We did quite a bit of work on Main Street beautification. I mean, that had been this kind of a sore spot for years for city council, was that we're trying to breathe life back into Commercial Street. There's times I go over to Commercial Street now, I can hardly find a place to park. And that's not a pat on the back, but I think in some ways we've been fairly successful in breathing some life back to Commercial Street. The thing with retail sales tax is a lot of times, I didn't make this rule up either, but a lot of times retail will follow housetops or rooftops. I remember a conversation I had one day with somebody from Macy's grocery store. Basically what he told me is, you put another 1,000 rooftops in Morgan City and we'll consider building a grocery store there. Retail sometimes follows rooftops and growth. So, it looks like we got McDonald's coming to town and that should generate some pretty good sales tax. We've made some strides in the last year or two with these 0.25% sales tax, which has generated some revenue for our roads. The county, I don't know if they've went ahead and passed those other 2.25% sales tax yet, but that's supposed to generate about $500,000 a year that the COG, the Council of Governments, will have at their disposal. So we're making some strides. We've made some pretty good strides, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is the point, Mayor, I think I need your help with maybe. As I recall, and maybe Teresa knows this as well, I think Morgan City is funded at about, as I recall, about 68-70% on sales tax and 30% property tax. Does that sound right, Mayor? Does that ring a bell to you?
You're pretty close. Tom.
Yeah. So
And so everybody knows retail sales tax is now split 50-50. I think that's where, you get your half of it is point of sale. So wherever you are on your phone and you buy, that's where dollars go. So if you're shopping, even though it's being shipped to your house, but you're shopping while you're down in Layton, then the sales tax goes to Layton, which is kind of weird, but it's also, so when I shop, when I'm up here on my phone, you get sales tax. But the other point is the location based, is because it used to be more location, and that's where zoning for dollars happened, where cities, American Fork did it. They zoned all the way out to the freeway so they could get the Home Depot and the Walmart and all of that. But the state pushed back on that, and because bad planning decisions were being made for zoning for dollars. So I'm going to add here, does our group agree business friendly policies? And I think it's more about just having discussions. I see your point about the remodel. The purpose of an impact fee is meaning it's new development and it's going to make impacts throughout the city. New subdivision, impacts the park system, the road system, the water system, all that. A remodel doesn't. I mean, that's existing business. So, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I'm not a impact fee writer, but I would disagree with that. So I'm gonna write business friendly policies. Talk with businesses regularly. What does Morgan City do to hear from your business community, like your in-town business community?
Hear from them?
Yeah, to get input, what can we do to help your business? Is
I've been driving on the streets and just talking.
okay.
I'm way excited with what Wayne has on the corner over here. Can't let it out yet. He's got some incredible good ideas. It'll be good. Just talking box car. Other than unfriendly neighbors with a little bit of smoke going. Barbecue smoke. How can you be? If I smell that smoke, it's like. I'm gone.
Maybe they want free samples.
Yeah. But I think our chamber is really good because it's very active. They have good meetings, they plan incredible things.
They're largely responsible for the hometown Christmas, 4th of July. So
And those two things are huge.
Okay, good.
that chamber struggled for years and years and years, and finally about 5 years ago, it took off. They do a good job.
To answer your question, we've had an economic development committee meeting, they used to meet over Northfront, they still do it on a monthly basis. And they used estate monies for bear funds. And they used to go out and interview all the businesses within the community and come back and report to that group what the business suggested to them. That used to happen. What happens now or not, that used to be one way we had of obtaining information from what the businesses needed. You used to have a secretary there, she used to go out, contact with different people, but they're part of the committee, they go out and contact different businesses.
Okay.
Well, if that answers your question.
Yeah,
or not,
that helps.
that's-
One thing also instrumental in helping that business get started up.
Right.
Providing some training in that.
To bear funds and some other state monies. Yes.
So does the city have its own economic development group or do they partner with the county?
Yeah,
Okay,
so it's that combination of different entities.
okay.
County DATC funds the park people, there are several entities that come to that meeting. These came parks. And
Do you guys like this goal? Because I kind of think it's a little short-sighted. I almost wonder if it should be a well-balanced economy, like, I mean, that could be a second goal. Having a sit with businesses and jobs here so that you're not necessarily an appendage of the Wasatch Front, but you're, standing on your own legs, which I think Morgan City mostly is, but you could become more of that kind of thing. So I don't know, I'm throwing that out as, I guess, maybe a second goal. If I were a resident reading this, I'd be like, all you care about is that the city has deep pockets. Now, I realize cities take money to run and cost operations and all that, but this doesn't, as a resident, this doesn't speak to me.
That's what I've heard for the last years I've been on the city council. We need more business to do things like that. If I had $10 to get down my bridge, I'd have more than $20. But I've heard it a lot. That's exactly how it's worded. We need more business, we need more tax cuts, we need more.
Well, that's what the city needs. What do the residents need? And when I say city, I mean a city as the organization, as the corporation. What do the rest of the residents need economically? place to work. Jobs, that actually was one of my things I was gonna get to. There's nothing in here about jobs, having more jobs closer to home kind of thing. I don't know if you've surveyed, how many Morgan residents work in the Wasatch Front?
Lot.
Well, that's good. And you have really fast internet at really cheap. You have better internet options than I do in Farmington, by the way.
Have we ever held like a small business emporium or something like that? When that people come in and talk to me and they're young, excited, they got an idea about starting a business. There's a million questions that they go online or whatever. And have we done something like that to see what's out there?
Do it 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh, okay. See, I'm always at work, so I don't.
Way good. Farmington, somewhere like that.
That where the kids do the adults? Oh,
Just talking to Andrew about it. He said, wow. There's lots of money.
oh,
So I've been just telling people like crazy. The auditorium, 1 to 4. And there's just all kinds of people that are help.
We even have like a program with women in business. luncheon.
Oh, Denise talks about that.
And then they have like the 5-week course. We talk about different ones that can get in. So there's a few things here in the city that is available. And then the ATC is a big resource and we send them there all.
Right?
Now, we just changed the name from CED to CPO. I mean, economic opportunities. Economic development. So there are some good things going on.
Andrew Willis is a great asset. And Andrew's connected with the rest of the state. He brings those programs to Morgan. We've had 2 or 3 of those every year for the last 4 or 5 years I'm aware of. And that group sits around and discusses what other kinds of trainings you would have. They've had a QuickBooks train, they've had internet train, they've had a marketing train. They offer all those kinds of things throughout the year. And that group that the mayor's talking about is a group that comes up with those ideas of which ones to do and how to do those. But Andrew's the main key behind that. His knowledge is incredible. He's great. Who is this?
Andrew Willis, he's out of the DATC.
Oh,
Davis Tech over.
yeah, Dave's Tech over time.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He'll take anybody and help you have a business plan. He'll take you to help have a business plan, help you have loans, he'll help you set a business plan. He'll help a person do any of those kind of things. They're offered for you for free.
Friend Higby Hunting. He, had to get a hold of Andrew and text him back and wow.
Yeah. And Andrew's amazing, but for some reason, people, it's free, they wouldn't take care of it. And Andrew's awesome. I mean, and Andrew won't offend he wouldn't offend a fly. He's great.
This should be really good. So.
Very knowledgeable.
Well, I think one of the things, if you go from a business standpoint, looking at Morgan to start a small business here, the very first thing you'll hear is not enough people, it's too far away. And so that's the thing we need to combat, Tony.
I don't think the city needs to be in the business of real estate, but I often wonder, does it make sense for the city to buy property and develop a business park? Because if somebody comes and says, I like your community, I'd like to establish a business here, it would really be nice to say, we have the spot for you. I've thought quite a lot about that. I don't know, how successful that would be. But I think a lot of times, to your point, Wes, a lot of businesses just can't find the place to get established. And I've often wondered if the city had a business park, does that make sense?
Back to the way we'd want to try to figure out this general plan and attract businesses. The best way to do that is to control the atmosphere. And if you're going to try to develop this part of the city, and I don't know if that's legal that the city can own the property and turn around and sell it. I don't know what that's like, but if we want to push everybody to this area and say, this is what we're envisioning over here, I think I don't know.
Yeah, so back to your question, that was actually the purpose of the lunch at the Utah League of Cities and Towns lunch, was all about helping cities develop their property. There's a lot of resources on that. At Salt Lake County, I worked on a project, acre and a half, the county owned, was left over from the DA office being built. And it was the busiest track station in all of Salt Lake County. They could have sold it for $5 million, but they decided to lease it to a developer for 50 years, and they'll get $50 million for 50 years. And so, but a lot of cities, school districts, organizations are doing that, looking at ways where you do long-term land leases to businesses. And
And they have a department that'll take and meet with you and find out what you have and help you to do your inventory and values and things like that.
Zions Bank is leading it up.
Yeah.
They
It's a
see it as a
big thing.
huge economic opportunity for Utah.
And Zions Bank
Sweden does it a lot. A lot of the Scandinavian countries have been doing it for a couple of decades. And a business is a a city is a corporation, kind of like a business.
And they have IHC as part of it.
So that's something that we could add to explore. So I want to throw out this goal here. Develop a local, self-sustaining, balanced economy, which provides opportunities to residents and will add businesses. How does that sound?
Yeah.
So, my point was that increase the city's tax base is entirely focused at the city, not necessarily at the residents. Residents benefit when you have a city that's in the black, but not.
But also to echo a little bit what Councilmember London said, something that is going to resonate. I've been here my whole life with Morgan residents is that exact statement, exactly how it's worded. Increase the city's tax base. That is
I have to
what
agree
you
with
hear.
that.
I
I see
mean,
what you're saying.
I know where I
You
see
can
where
think
you're
bigger.
coming from, but to hit people right where it
You ask
hurt,
10 people in Morgan what we need, they're going to tell you we need a bigger
and
tax
it's going to be
base.
almost worded
Okay.
exactly like that. So I mean, I see where you're coming
I'm not
from,
saying get
but
rid of it. I'm
yeah.
saying we add a
add,
second.
yeah,
Is
add
that
to
okay?
it, add to it. But I mean, that just have
Okay.
something that stands out to people when they read it. That exact
Yeah.
wording is going to a lot of people.
It matters. You guys know I live in Farmington. They got Lagoon and Station Park.
You got a tax base.
And I see the city spends money on things for residents, so it does come back.
Hey, I
I
lived
may
in
not spend as
Mercury
much
for
there as
years.
you, but I do get my fishing stuff there. Okay, let's go through some of this in here. Apply a two-pronged approach to development to encourage greater growth with a minimum impact on the city's level of services. So I think I finally reading the document, the two-prong approach is what's good for visitors. Tourism is good for residents. Trails, parks, maybe an
We need to
amphitheater.
explain that a little more explicitly, what
Yeah,
the two prongs are.
Yeah. And that is kind of what I was saying.
Yeah,
What are the two
perfect.
prongs list in A? Okay. Become a marketable destination. Market Morgan activities outside the county to enhance local economy, provide funding for desired recreation infrastructure, and increase the local tax base without increasing population. That's pretty hard to say. We want everybody to come play here, but you can't stay here.
Someone here from the tourism board, that'd be really helpful.
You come for the day, but
Right.
maybe overnight, but no. Okay, promote Morgan City. And then focus on external marketing of the recreational opportunities. You know, I could see people in the Wasatch Front loving to come up here for a weekend and just getting away from the city, getting on the trails. But there's one, you don't have the trails, and two, you've got one hotel. So my question is, does everybody agree that tourism is something you'd like to beef up?
But isn't it mostly in the county where these trails and things are, not so much in the city?
They're gonna stay and they're gonna eat in the city and they're gonna play in the county.
Okay.
I'd like to ask this.
You're the tourism guy.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like you're just butting heads.
Well, so a couple of things that are gonna be happening. This will feed into this. One is we just finished up a branding for Morgan County Tourism. The branding, it's a branding and marketing. The state matched the funds and we came in and we actually have a brand now that we can start to put on stuff and market. Morgan Valley is where it came to, rather than if you put a county or city on it, it sounds too governmental.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty good. I could show you later.
That's something you can take to the media, to television and.
That's the idea. So that's one. The second one is a group called Coraggio, which another state project where they match the funds. And that is a long-term tourism plan. So destination marketing plan that starts in December. So that'll already feed into this. And that goes through this exact thing. How do we get people to come spend their money and then balance it? It's so hard on that tourism board and the TTAB board to sit there and take off my resident hat and think more like like attract tourism, because on the one side, you want to stay the way that it is and have this thing like come spend your money and leave. On the other side, it's like, well, we got to develop stuff so people want to come in the first place.
Yeah. And a question is, how do you get them on this side of Morgan? No, I've been skiing Snow Basin for a long time. I don't come to Morgan City after I go skiing. I did too. Okay. So, but how do we get them over here and away from, nothing's wrong with Mountain Green or Snow Basin, but how do you get
Residents
them?
of Mountain Green don't even come over here.
Yeah.
Ray.
This concept's been floated around for a long time. Sometimes I put on devil's advocate hat. I say, okay, if I was living in Bountiful, what would I want to come to Morgan to do? What do you have? What does Morgan have to offer for me to come to do for a weekend?
Como Springs.
I have to
Wait.
tell you, no,
Tu-
wait,
Tubing.
Seriously, no.
clean air.
One.
I would say that he made a comment about Como Springs. And since we've been
But
hosting this year and made it look nice, trimmed up the trees, started promoting, we've tripled the stays this year alone. And I can tell you, every resident comes to us as a camp host and says, hey, we want to go somewhere to eat. I bet you we've sent everyone there. We have one group that's coming again next weekend that have been to Morgan 5 times this year already.
go to where?
5 times they've been here,
You go where? Go to
Como
what?
Springs.
Oh, I didn't know it was open.
Yeah.
No, not the Springs part.
It's just a campsite. It's a
Yeah,
campground,
Cool.
but we've tripled what it was last year,
Oh.
just in 1 year.
Campground's one thing. What else could you tell me that Bountiful residents come to Morgan to do for even a day or a weekend?
So I used to not have any idea.
Yeah,
My eyes have been
that's-
opened up a little bit being on this, but go ahead.
Open your
first.
eyes up.
God at Sunrise for saying this by many people. You had a bike trail in this town, a loop or something that went from Morgan City up around Porterville or Richfield, back into Morgan City. You know what it's like now? People like to ride bikes in Morgan.
Uphill bike.
They do.
There's a study right now. There's a trails committee. We meet once a month and that's as part of it
I
to
know
figure
where
those
they're
out.
But that's one.
So-
Give me-
So,
Yes, I'm
so
trying-
yeah, East
just
Canyon
under
Resort,
conservation.
awesome resource. East Canyon has got a lot more there than I ever realized. Okay, Lost Creek is gonna get a lot more money. They're gonna have more development up there.
We can
Golf-
advertise those two. Good.
Yep,
Keep
golf,
going.
the golf
Keep going.
course is a great one, along with their camping, which is good there. You got Como that's got there. The Creamery, the Rose Hill with Aaron Rose and his family, they actually have people that stay. I don't know if that's an Airbnb or not, so. But they go there and they'll go through that process. How do you churn butter and make cheese and do all that kind of stuff? People come up, believe it or not, one that caught all the tourism people that I didn't even think about, Bingham's Meats. Those bacon bombs are on all sorts of billboards.
Yeah, it's
People-
advertised in Weaver.
People come up here, right? Then you have,
I
you
bought
know,
one.
Taggart's is
That's the
one, the
one.
tubing is one. The bike trails, now this is just outside our county, but those bike trails that are up at Snow Basin are amazing. They are super fun. I didn't know I did. I opened my eyes this year for it. But that is going through. And so it's,
I bring that up to the fact that a lot of us don't think of those things. There's things here, but we don't take advantage of advertising those yet.
so part of the thing I'll add on this is one of the things that our group with tourism is doing is we're going to create itineraries that have these things. So if I say, I'm going to come and do, and it depends on the type of visitor you are.
Right.
There's the plus, the add and one, they're just going to come up for an afternoon. Here's what you do. I'm going to be here for 2 days. I'll be here for 3 days. You know, here's what you could do in those 3 days with, you know, fishing, tubing, reservoir, water skiing, golfing, you know, and we're going to try to build those so people at the hotel or at any of the places they visit or the visitor center will have that to go through. That's one of our tasks.
Now you got a hotel that helped a lot.
Yeah. Airbnbs are one we
So
got.
one of the things that we have a perfect example of here about why would they come? You can talk to most people and they know about Taggart's. And I've talked to folks that stay in Park City and drive down here. And so why? That's really the question. Why is Taggart's so notable and been there so long? Consistently good food. People can drive that far and they know what they're gonna get 99% of the time. And that,
They want to get out of the city.
It's unique. It's
Like
unique.
Maddox, right? I haven't been to Taggart's, but I've been to Maddox bunch.
You've never been to.
you're fired.
Sorry. Holy cow. Let's do some takeout.
Next month, we do Taggart's.
The two things that still have been. One's Como. People still ask me about Como.
Yeah.
You go on the side, come in town, yeah, where you from, Morgan, you're in Timbuktu, where you from, I'm from Morgan, oh, yeah, we used to go to Como Springs. I get that all the time. That has name recognition. Not there, but the chicken in.
Larry's, yeah.
Yeah, chicken in.
Oh, you still up, chicken in up there?
You always got the same thing when you went. You come here for chicken. It was awesome, a little greasy, and then you go home. Same with Taggart's though.
But now it's Taggart. Taggart's has got it as a destination.
Yeah, people, I talk to people from everywhere and they,
You won't know anybody there.
yeah,
Bingham's is a big draw. Yeah. But had a good friend from Canada, met him in Colorado there, COVID killed it for a couple of years. Anyway, he got a permit here in Morgan County. And he wanted to stay, in Ogden. I says, no, trust me, just come and stay in Morgan. Stayed at the Cobblestone with a great big compliment on how well he was treated. This is a multi-millionaire. He shot his deer the first 15 minutes of the first day.
You shoot it in the city?
So we had three days that I took him around. Just drove him around, showed him, and I went over by my house to get something, and he was looking at the mountains, and he says, "That's as pretty as Switzerland." And I says, "That's funny. That's what I tell people all the time. I don't need to travel. I just look out my back window and I'm in Switzerland." But he just complimented so much about, and then his comment to me was, "Don't lose this. Don't turn it big." But But it was really, he was really, really, really impressed. He said the whole motel was so good to them. Had a great continental breakfast, treated them like kings. He said, well, it's probably one of the best places I've ever been.
Good. How much? We got 15 minutes.
Yeah. The short answer, I think one thing here is you're gonna get a lot of that from the county tourism board. We're gonna have a plan that we could fit right into this. It'll do those things.
Okay, well, I'll add work with the county
Yep.
on here.
Been established that the train depot is going to be a visitor center? Or is that still up in the air?
I still think that's the plan.
That'd be cool. Have you
That is
been to
still
the
the plan.
Heber City? Their visitor center. I was there this week. It's unbelievable. It's just really cool. Next time you're in Heber, stop in there. It's really remarkable. Okay, policy 3, update zoning to allow appropriate smart growth and correct locations to provide places for internal growth to happen. How we talked about that. Is everybody on board with policy 3?
Well, talking about what cluster commercial nodes is. In my vision, doesn't see that happen. So help me understand what that means. This thing talks about several places.
It's kind of what you already have. It's just saying like actually having a downtown and really clustering it, not spreading out.
Okay, I was thinking, man, you put one in North Warren, you put one over, you have different.
In your case, it's just one area. I don't know where else
Okay.
you would do it.
Well, I don't
Any
need that,
other
so I was
big
confused.
business there in Morgan City would suffer at this point.
Okay.
I think that wording probably comes from these developments that's out west of Layton and that they build them shopping centers.
Yeah.
And then everybody builds around, but we don't.
I think that's what the verbiage comes from or leads you to. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm moving on the next page. Focus zoning on increasing the numbers of rooftops within walking distance to retail clusters. I think we could replace this to the downtown.
I think downtown and rather than retail cluster.
Yeah.
Retail clusters to me is you're trying to put 2 or 3 downtown. That's never.
And really that's commercial
Yeah.
and state street.
Same concept we see later on in the same chapter, same concept over and over. again.
And I think, I mean, that's a good growth strategy is let's try to get more, those that are going to live here and grow here, try to encourage that infill and then add some density by commercial and state street area.
Can I ask a question? Just my own curiosity, down past the car dealerships. That's that space, that land that's commercially zoned, I believe, on the other side of the houses, between the houses and the freeway. That is all commercial, right? So like what kind of businesses do we think would go there? Because I look at that could be a cluster. What I'm saying, it's in walking distance to all those houses there and all the new stuff going up North Morgan.
Right behind.
Yes. Yeah.
That won't know until.
Well, not the big field, but next, does he own the field between the freeway and the houses? I thought that was all zoned. Not that one,
Right here.
not that field. Go over one more, right there, all of that.
Yes, it's commercial highway.
Yeah, all that
Commercial
right there.
highway.
That's all commercial. Anyway, that, when you say cluster, like I could see that being somewhat of a,
There's not a lot of rooftops there. I don't,
That's because you're not seeing.
no, that's
the
not
map.
an updated map at all. I got filled in. Filled in and this is growing all the way up.
oh,
that hill.
let me fix
There's
that.
there's 100
Actually, there we go.
houses there. that
Oh,
you
right
don't
there.
see.
There's even more than that.
To answer your question, Jeff, I think the reason it was zoned highway commercials simply because it had really good visibility from.
Yeah,
from the interstate.
but even that space is owned by,
The same developer that owns everything on the hill.
Okay.
They did the subdivision there.
What I've seen around the valley is that's where they're starting to put those strips with living on the above and just some retail on the bottom. Is, see, down south of Salt Lake, there's a lot of that. going on.
Yeah. Here's a question though, when you're driving through Morgan, do you want to see farms or do you want to see like, Salt Lake on next to your freeway?
Exactly.
I think the highway commercial should be limited, not a whole lot bigger than what you have. I mean,
Oh, I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying that's what I've seen along the freeways.
yeah, I mean, really, your downtown is your.
Yeah.
Is your place. I mean, who owns this? That's a huge piece, right?
Nice.
That's,
Land
there's something
funds.
in the works for that.
Yeah.
It's,
Is this the one that we're doing?
it's
the-
all commercial.
That's-
It's all gonna be.
Yeah, that's what
commercial. I
we
mean,
talked about doing, the
houses,
mixed
not
residential,
commercial,
which is the perfect
residential.
spot for that.
It'll all end up residential.
Okay.
I guarantee it will.
Cause he tried to cheat that through. the
Yeah,
roof,
that,
right?
I mean,
And then I think. we'll
I think
end up getting
focusing
a
on,
little
okay, let's get
more-
back to this. We have just a few more minutes. Implement properly scaled economic development, scale commercial growth similar to existing neighborhood scale retail to provide professional service, food, gas, lodging, general. I think the idea there is like Morgan should grow Morgan size, you know. A Walmart, although you don't have a place for it, it would dwarf Morgan. A Costco will not come here, but if it did, it would dwarf
Well,
you.
one concern I have as we look at some of this, some of the property you were just barely talking about. Well, let me do some residential in here to spur the commercial on. No, nobody wants commercial now. And I keep hearing other areas, oh, this will all be residential. My concern is we're gonna fill everywhere up with residential and we're not gonna have anywhere left for the Costco or for and we're gonna fill everywhere up central with residential, and there's not gonna be anywhere left to build that other grocery store or your strip mall or.
Okay, I just added that. Through zoning, preserve key commercial locations and areas. I've talked to plenty of cities that wish they had certain areas that were built residential, saying, man, that was really the perfect place for a commercial. But at the time, the developer knew that they could flip it really quick and, you know, there's always a demand for houses. But in a few key locations, say, yep, we're gonna stick to commercial.
Have we ever looked, told you I drove down State Street and counted, there's like 13 homes from grocery store to Young Street. There's really 13 homes that are consequential. Yeah, right on State Street. That we spent a lot of time talking about. And to your point, can we rezone so that when them people sell, that is commercial? They can't.
It already is.
It already is.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way to do it. right?
Economic, that'll happen naturally, as long as there's good zoning there and there's a demand, at some point, somebody would say this house isn't, even though it's an insurance agency, the highest and best use of this property is to put in something else, you know.
Well, an example of that is where Ridley sits or where McDonald's is going. That was what, Jim Murdoch's house and Bob Retta's house.
No, there you go.
There were two homes there, that was, or three.
Okay, we're gonna go on to the chapter here for 5 minutes. We'll come back to environment when we have time. Okay. All about the two-prong approach, which is talked about here. Economic development to serve local residents and employees and enhance the growing tourism market.
So just the two-pronged economic development for locals and the tourism to get outside in. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
saying what's good for one is good for the other. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have probably have very few employees that are driving up to work here.
But that could change in the near future with our resort over at the mouth of the canyon.
You'll have to. Yeah.
There's not enough people up here to manage to keep properly staffed the businesses we have, let alone the amount of people they're talking over for that. I think you will
Probably be
see,
some good jobs.
you may
there.
see some people coming up the canyon.
Okay, increasing our financial resiliency. Okay, this is all about the property tax commission. Any comments on this page?
Two typos above that picture.
Morgan's commercial.
The numbers is 50, instead of 1.1, it's 15, instead of figure 1.2, it's figure 16.
Oh, okay. Will you send me that? Or just take
Yeah.
pictures then? Okay. Anything else on this page? This chapter goes heavy into data.
Yeah.
Okay, historical total tax rate for Morgan City. I found this to be pretty interesting to see just where your revenues have come from over the years. Really, you've had the big growth in the school district, property tax. But the county and the city, you look at the numbers, have been pretty consistent.
We got to wrap this up pretty quick, Jake.
Want to do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, anything on this page? This is just data. Shop local, okay?
People who work. My wife would call me and say, stop by and grab this.
And did you look at the sales leakage? This is page 71. This is fascinating. This tells you what you do well. So you're killing it with cars, motor vehicles, 400, and that's a good thing to be killing it with in terms of money. But where you're not good is clothing's not bad, electrical and appliance, that's a big store to come. Furniture and home furnishings, gas stations, not bad. Okay, general merchandise, that's like a Walmart, like maybe a mini Walmart kind of thing, but buying more. That's what you're talking about, the general merchandise. Health and personal, also not very good. Sporting goods, a little low. Wholesale trade, I don't really know what that one is. And then non-durable goods. This is data. Let's add that shop local as part of our strategy. I'm going to add that at the beginning. So we're going to pick up here. We have just one item on our agenda, which you'll get to, and then we'll come back here.
Okay. Yeah. Meet back up here at the top and
Hey.
The events are good.
The problem is, on the company, they look for the rodeo, the fair, the coordinates, the whatever. But they don't.
Fun, huh?
Yep, yep.
A lot of good things happening here.
Appreciate you, Jake.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. You read and mark it up. I love it. Do you want to, you're going through that whole,
Well, I'm sitting there on Saturday night watching.
just wonder what's the best way to get your comments.
What's on your top? You see some of your smaller.
Whichever, I can shoot if you want to send me.
I'll send you this.
Some point, everything you got, and I can send you what I have.
Okay.
Different. No, you send me stuff that you've already changed. Okay, you send me that.
Okay.
No, you know what you changed.
Yeah.
After you're done.
Okay.
And you
Let's
send
do
it before you've made more changes. At some point, maybe send me your most recent version of your comments on those.
Yeah.
I just take my stuff and I just-
Okay. I'll send you all the other
Maybe
chapters
it's
again.
You know, it's an addition. Go it done.
Okay.
No need to have you sort through Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that. When did you do that? That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Everyone, at 7 o'clock, we need to get this meeting started.
Already on the agenda. You want us here? Okay.
That sounds great. Hey, how are you guys? No. Okay. When you're ready. No, I don't want to take it down, or do that.
Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Welcome everybody attending the meeting and those who are on Zoom. Okay. First item is, anybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes from August 16th and September 20th meeting that could have a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
I've read them and I approve them. I've read them and I approve them.
Okay, we've had a motion to approve them. Do we have a second?
You have a second, Mr. Chair.
So we have a motion by okay, Mark Francis and a second by Justin Reese to approve the minutes of August 16th and September 20th. Is there any discussion on this motion? Nope. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Teresa, the vote was unanimous, approved for both sets of minutes. Okay, the agenda item tonight that we're talking about is the Morgan Grace Fellowship Church has applied for conditional use permit to lease the building located at 101 and 103 Commercial Street. The building are attached, but have two addresses. This property is located in the central commercial zone and also within historic overlay zone. In the land use classification table 4-2 in section 10.16-160 of the Morgan City Code, a church is allowed as conditional use in this zone. There are several factors to take into consideration, such as parking, distance to alcohol establishments, allowed use and recreation of each floor in the building. We should discuss the impacts of this use and also mitigating conditions to be applied. Also, if conditional use permit is granted, it stays with the property even after the church leaves. So keep in mind that when we're deciding the mitigating conditions for the future. Jake, would you like to direct this discussion regarding these conditional uses?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair. Jump right in, and I see we have our applicants. You guys with the church? Okay. Oh, okay, great. Thank you for coming. In a second, we'll just give you an opportunity to answer questions that Planning Commission may have. So here's a map showing the location of the property. It's on Commercial Street, 101, 103, single building, two addresses. Historically, it was two buildings, but it's now combined. There's a picture of the building right there. Pulled that from Google Maps. As I looked at it, you know, the two issues are already mentioned. The first issue being that it is within distance of an alcohol establishment. However, with the alcohol establishment already being there and the church being okay with that, then it's okay. And it has no effect on the existing business that sells alcohol. And it also has no effect on the church as long as they're okay with it. Teresa did talk to Gary, right? Gary Crane and Steve, and they provided legal counsel on that. Steve, do you have anything additional to add to that?
No, that's correct. It's usually when the liquor store wants to come close to a church that regulation applies, but it doesn't restrict them the other way around.
And what if in the future, this being Commercial Street where we intend to see lots of restaurants and other activities, if another restaurant or bar or something like that would like to come in this area, they would also be able to continue they would be able to have that use because of alcohol already being sold in this area. Is that correct?
No, that's not. They would have to comply with that distance.
Oh, they would.
The
Okay.
new ones would have to, yes.
Okay. So that's just something to keep in mind, but we don't have any applications. There's no pending, that kind of thing. Okay. So that was the first item. And then actually there's 3 items I wanted to mention. And then the second item I wanted to mention was we did receive a letter from the fire marshal, and his comment was that the basement was not sufficient in terms of egress for having public gatherings. And so our based off of fire's recommendation that this use would be for the main floor, which is where it's intended, but that public gatherings not be allowed in the basement due to safety. So that was item number 2 I wanted to mention. And then the third item is off-street parking. The city ordinance does require 1 stall per 5 seats or per a distance on a pew or a bench. My understanding is currently attendance is about 80 people, which that means they need about 16 stalls. And on site, there's approximately 7 to 8 stalls as I looked at that behind the building. So they do need additional parking. I want to bring to your attention in the historic overlay zone that it says the planning commission is authorized to reduce the required parking upon the finding of 1 hardship. Maybe it's not there, or this is a lease of a property, not a construction. The existence of off-site parking within 500 feet that is not considered required parking for other businesses or utilized during the same business hours as the prospective user. This being a church, the use is going to happen mostly on Sunday. There's not necessarily a lot of activity happening on Commercial Street on Sunday. And so therefore there's plenty of parking on Commercial Street. And so the Planning Commission does have the authority to allow the off-street park, to allow the parking within 500 feet, which there's plenty of parking for that. So does that part make sense in terms of this is what the ordinance says, but there's also the clause there allowing the Planning Commission to make that judgment call that there is, and talking with Teresa and staff and looking at, I think there's ample and there's no reason not to count that. And one thing I want to bring to your attention, a lot of times we have a street like Commercial Street, or which is similar to a historic main street. What is built there, if you were to apply suburban zoning ordinances to a Commercial Street or a historic main street, you would actually get rid of what you love most about the main street: buildings next to buildings, on-street parking, parking behind, you know what I'm saying? Historic Main Street type environment has today's typical zoning in a city would destroy a downtown. And so you have to kind of put on that lens that we're looking at this like this is a historic area. This is how we want it to look and form. And so typical zoning isn't always the best thing for that. Just a perspective on it. So that's my comments. I would suggest now that we have the applicant, if they want to come up, and planning commission can ask them questions, or you can ask me questions first, and then you can proceed with the item.
Yeah, we can proceed with the applicants if they have anything that they would like to say.
Any questions? Questions?
And one, I do want to add one comment that I had is that they're probably, and this is a question for Steve, that Steve, with this conditional use permit, could the planning commission make a judgment call in terms of how, at what point could this organization grow to before they would have to, they've outgrown their space? They're, they're granting this conditional use based off of today's attendance of about 80 people. At some point, it could be too big for the area for parking or something like that. I'm not saying it is going to happen or not going to happen, but could that conditional use reflect a certain size of attendees?
Yes, and you could either do that type of an assessment now, or you can say if the conditional use permit is allowed, you could say that we can revisit the issuance of this permit if indeed it grows to a size that the conditions can no longer be mitigated to lessen the impact on the surrounding businesses.
Thank you.
Does any of the commission have questions?
Yeah, I have a couple, 3 questions. It says the basement can't be used. Is there enough room on the main floor to accommodate without using the basement?
Chase Roberts. Is that good? Okay. Yes, sir. So that we're planning on having all services on the main floor.
On the main floor?
Yes, sir. So that would be storage, looking at putting in a bathroom downstairs and different things, but that's the main floors where the service will be held.
So the bathroom can be used, just not for.
There's bathrooms all on the top and bottom floor.
So is the building approved from the fire marshal for occupancy of 80 people on the main floor?
I'll defer that to our landlord's representative.
Laurel Orr.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I've not heard from Dave Rich a specific number in occupancy. He knows of this process and what the applicants are going to be doing. He hasn't spoken up of any concerns in that matter, but I don't know of a specific number. That's a great question. I can.
So that's something we
Reach
need
out to
to
him.
look into from the fire marshal.
Mhm.
I know like some of the
Did he do a
restaurants-
site visit?
He's been multiple
Did?
times.
Okay, I think it's fair to say based off of this that,
Did it.
yeah.
But it's a
that
non-issue.
That it's not an issue.
Mhm.
And so, will you only be occupying this on Sunday? Or will you have activities during the week where you would also need parking spaces?
Yeah, they're minimal. Yeah, sorry, Gavin Roberts. Gavin Roberts. So Sunday nights are only big shindig. That's when we have the majority. There's never going to be a time where there's going to be 80 of us. And so never, we would not anticipate at this time ever a time during the week. Every now and then we'll do maybe 8, 9 of our ladies will get together and have lunch. I hope we understand the situation and we want to be very sensitive to that and aware of that to where we honor that Sunday night at 5 o'clock is when we use it. Other than that, it's very much intermittent and never that large.
Yeah, okay. Because I can see that be a problem if it's
So
on
can
a
we?
Wednesday
Absolutely.
night, if you have 80 people there and they're trying to find parking places and the commercial establishments can't find a place to park. So, yeah, thank you.
Justin, did you have something?
I was just want to ask the question of the current location you were in now. You've already made the decision to move over to this new one.
Chase Roberts, spoken with landlord and property manager, and they just know that our move is conditional based on your decision. Because we know that we're applying for conditional use. And so you guys, I think, all know the landlord, but he understands where we're at. And so there's other things there with the food pantry and trying to keep that open and things. And so we've been very clear with them since the beginning of this month of what's going on. He knows. And so we're just waiting. It's basically a pending approval for us to either move on. If this doesn't work out, then he knows that we're going to want to stay.
So follow up with that then. So with that move then, so for church services, it would go to the new location. The food pantry would stay.
We would have to, Chase Roberts, we would have to work with our landlord to see what we can make happen. We want it to, and we're trying.
You wanted to stay or you wanted to move with?
We'd have to stay.
Okay.
And so that's, I don't know if we host that. Our church covers the rent. And then, we do get community support from outside for different things with the food pantry. But our church does cover the rent and the internet that we use for the food pantry. And so our hope and our goal is that we would be able to work something out with the current landlord to keep it at that location. Our lady that runs it does a great job for us. And then we would have our services and things on Commercial Street.
Steve, I got a question for you on the page. It says Morgan Corporation conditional use permit. About a quarter way down, it says Sunday services only, occasional functions, talking about the other in the basement. Okay. And this is going to carry past these gentlemen and stay with this piece of property. And is there a different way to word that? Because the next people that move in, it's going to say occasional functions. Well, my idea of occasional and maybe their idea of occasional is completely different. Is if it's a hazard down there, is there some different wording that we should put in there?
And when you talk about occasional functions, I'm a little bit confused. Are we talking about only the basement? Or are we talking about occasional functions anywhere in the?
Yeah, from what I understand, that the main floor is going to be the service, and then the rest of it says occasional functions, office, small, and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking about these guys are here and saying yay. And then if they leave, the next people that move in and this follows the building, is it going to be something to readdress? And can we word it differently if we don't want people down in the basement using it as office space or whatever? I don't know.
Yes, no, you can, and it's good to outline those so they know exactly what it is. And there's got to be a reason for it. And it sounds as though Dave Rich has indicated there's a reason for limiting it in the basement. And so you could actually specifically say, no more than X number of people in the basement, and, occasional, you could actually define that. I mean, reasonably say, occasional based on this is no more than 2 times a month or once a month or whatever. And if their use or the congregation grows, they could come in and ask that conditional use permit be amended. And then maybe the city would be okay with once a week as opposed to once a month or twice a month. And so it would be good to look at the parameters, see what it is that they need, and if it's workable, just so that you can basically, for lack of a better term, keep control of it in case it grows and conflicts and we're not addressing the conditions that are specified.
Okay, thanks. Right.
So in speaking with Dave Rich, what the intent of this letter was is that public gatherings, meaning the public invited into the basement, is something that is prohibited due to ingress and egress. I think his intent was is that if it's like a private, if you, for example, I'm not saying this is what it is, but if Chase has a counseling group with 2 or 3 people that are personally invited, or 10 people, and have that gathering down there, that's acceptable. But to have like an open public gathering in the basement, it's prohibited. A lot of times you're not sure how many people are going to be there. It's not ADA compliant. So those are why public meetings are not allowed in the basement.
Oh, okay.
Based on that, my recommendation.
Comment on that. What the discussion was with our landlord, and our property manager, things like commercial on Christmas on commercial, where there was people coming in and out, and that was my understanding, that was an issue versus, and we can, you guys are the ones with definitions of what it means to be private, but different setting there of even church gathering versus Christmas on commercial, people coming in and out and that type of thing. And so just a comment there on what our conversation had been about this letter and what that was referring to on things like Christmas on commercial last year. And my family was there, which was fun, by the way, but.
There was some clarifications from Jake or Steve. Chairs indicated that this conditional use permit would stay with the building, not the business. I thought it stayed with the
Correct.
business, not the building.
It's for the building.
Really? The
But
condition.
it's for this use. Yeah.
Like last week, last time, out at the builder, if they close up shop, then that conditional use stays with that building.
Yes, and so if another church came to this location, then that's, yes, they could use it. But this conditional use would not apply if a different type of business wanted to come to this building. And Steve, any comments?
That's
Yeah.
the building.
Yeah, that's correct.
Can you clarify that for us? The conditional use permit, does it stay with the building?
Yes, it stays with the property, but it doesn't, as Jake was saying, it does not open it to all conditional uses. It would still be based on this use. So the conditional use would only run with this property if the next use was also a church.
Next use is the same use.
Yes.
Okay.
And the next comment,
If the next use was an arcade and that were conditional use, which I don't know if it is or not, but if it were something that was conditional use, they would have to start that process over again.
It just stays with the building if the business stays the same, use stays the
The
same.
use,
So if use changes, that nullifies the conditional use permit
yes.
when use change. Okay.
And Mayor, Mr. Little, like the previous conditional use permit we did last year, there was already a conditional use permit for outdoor storage.
Right.
And they exceeded that conditional use permit, and so it had to be revisited.
That'll be done. Okay.
and then just one other comment I wanted to make, and I'm still a little bit fuzzy on exactly the restrictions on the use of the basement. So my recommendation would be if he's concerned about the access there, that they do what most, it seems like fire marshals do in different areas. They just say occupancy limit, and whether it's 5, 7, 10 or whatever, and that be posted either as you go down to the basement or somewhere in the basement, and just so that they know that that's the number that he's comfortable in allowing down there.
Oh, are we good there? Are we good? Okay. Yep. We did have a number of conversations a year and a half ago. Dave Rich was present, Ty Bailey, Josh Goodman was also present about this use of the basement and what we could do and what we could not do. Our understanding, takeaway from those meetings, is that the basement, it would be a perfect overflow for other businesses that are established on the upper levels of that building, that it could be ancillary use for other businesses that were established in that building. So we thought this was a good match based on our takeaways from that meeting. I just lost my train of thought on that. Oh, we had been using the basement prior to this as a private event space where someone could come and rent it for the use for a couple of hours to have a family party or whatnot. And so that was also acceptable for them. And there, in those conversations, we never talked about an occupancy level. But the fact that it was a private event was acceptable to Dave and Ty and Josh. So that was our takeaway from that meeting. That's how we've been using it in the past. And that's why we thought that this was a good match based on those conversations.
We have anything else? All right, Joe.
You ready for a motion?
Okay. We ask for a motion either to grant or deny a conditional use permit. And also list the mitigating conditions in the motion so that they're on record. Now, do I have a motion on this?
If I may, I've got one more question. It may, Jake or Steve, what is the limit for a business or restaurant selling alcohol to be now located from the door of this church?
I think it's 600 feet.
Yes.
By doing this, you
This is
eliminate-
what the
by doing
city
this, you're
ordinance
eliminating alcohol.
says right here. 600 feet for retailer on off premise. And then licensed premise 200 feet. And Steve, maybe you could expound on the difference between the two.
The second one is off premise only. So in other words, like a 7-Eleven or some other small store that might, just sell alcohol that cannot be consumed on premises.
Okay, that's the 200 feet.
That's correct.
Okay.
So how many feet are they away?
Again, we don't have to worry about the existing alcohol sales. It'd just be, that would only restrict any future alcohol sales.
So 600 feet for a new restaurant now to move in, you're gonna be limited, correct? For an on-premise. My only concern with this, I think the conditional use permit should probably be based on occupancy of the building. My only concern is 600 feet, we're potentially could be shutting off all of Commercial Street to future restaurants that may want to sell beer or wine or alcohol. You're down to the other end of, I think when I measured it, it ends about at the vacant. Yeah, it's almost to the craft store, essentially, the old Browning store. We've got a vacant lot that you don't know what they may want to do on a ground level or something. That's my only concern with this. Through the conditional use, is there any way we can ask that it can be allowed, or is there any way around that that now some business can't come in, want to open a restaurant with alcohol, and now they're no longer able to do that because of the church that's there on Sundays? I think it's a great place for it. That's my only concern. I don't want to limit future businesses on this entire street. Is there any way around that? Don't get me wrong, I appreciate what the church has done in town. I love seeing their stuff around. I think it's great. That's my only concern with this.
Steve, do you have anything on this?
Sure. That's a discussion for another time. You'd have to adjust your underlying ordinance and see how it is that you would want to address that in the future. Cities have some leeway. I know that the state law has established some criteria, but so you'd have to address your underlying ordinance. And so
So
it's
there is
not,
something we could do then. Could we basically say in the historic overlay zone, this doesn't apply, or on Commercial Street or something like that in terms of distance?
those are some options that we could look at.
State code is fine.
Obviously, under the current configuration of the ordinance, what you have before you though is a conditional use permit, and which means generally that it's allowed, but there are some impacts that you can impose conditions on to lessen those impacts. But you could not impose on this conditional use their inability to, for lack of a better term, again, protest against any other business that wanted to locate close to them, if that makes sense.
Steve, I got a question. Where this is only a Sunday operation and all liquor is prohibited for sale on Sundays. Not in Morgan?
Not anymore.
I guess I need to go out and buy some, support the community. But I'm just trying to think of,
Yeah, when was the last time you went fishing? Huh?
I'm with Lance on this, that we're looking down the road, are we limiting the next business that wants to come in, a restaurant, or that's the part.
It sounds like what Steve is saying, that there is flexibility in the state code that we could carve. It wouldn't have anything to do with the current application, but we could go back at some future point
Oh,
and adjust the city ordinance and specifically look at the historic overlay zone or commercial. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, and yeah, so it's not an issue that can be addressed with this application.
That was state code though, Steve.
Well, state code gives us some flexibility, and so the city's ordinance could be modified to address this issue in the future. But again, like I said, it's not an issue that can be addressed with this application.
I thought the 600 feet was state code. I didn't think we could modify state code.
They give you some leeway, and like I said, we'd have to review that, but that would be for a future discussion.
so any other discussion on this?
My one other point is maybe the planning commission may want to say if attendance gets to a certain level, and then we could revisit it, kind of thing. Just saying,
Certain level.
yeah, number of attendees, cars, that kind of thing. Basically saying at some point, if they've outgrown their spot and it's become an issue with parking, that you have that flexibility to go back and look at it.
Okay.
And I think that's something where you would ask them, say, what's a reasonable number? Is it 200? That kind of thing, saying that you're not, it doesn't mean that the conditional use goes away if they hit that. It just means that the city could go back and revisit it.
When we do that, if you have the fire marshal and the building owner establish an occupancy rate, that could be your number. Instead of the church guessing on what number might be, you have the sheriff marshal establish an occupancy rate. I can't exceed that.
And of course, then occupancy might not equate to parking, and so it may be something as simple as saying that, obviously because of the limited amount of parking in the area, if parking becomes an issue due to the use or the increase of the congregation of the church, at that time the conditional use permit could be revisited. So it could be a little bit more open-ended than a specific number, but obviously since parking is an issue, that could be specifically designated in the motion for a cause to revisit the permit in the future.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I make a comment.
Mayor?
I know these things are incredible. And I would actually think that they're hoping it does get to be a problem. And I know they've changed locations. If they outgrew this building, then they would be looking for another spot. But I understand we need to protect that, but just know that I have a positive recommendation. Incredible people. They do amazing work on it. Just talked about earlier about positive, things like that. And so that, I'm just throwing that out, positive. I'll bet these two gentlemen are hoping that they surpass the parking. And then they would take care of business. I know they would, just know they would. I also have like what Lance said. And the state code. We're working on one other situation in the city with that. And there are some leeways that the city can do to make that so it's more flexible.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you got anything else?
Chase Roberts, thank you for that, Mayor. And I would just say that we don't want to keep Chili's out of Morgan. I mean, if Chili's comes in and wants to sell margaritas, we want that to happen. So, I'm just saying, just as far as we're for Morgan, I think that's where your comment is coming from as well. And so whatever we got to do in the future to make it work, we want to be there. We wouldn't be here right now. And so hopefully that helps you at least know that we're willing to work with you, whatever it looks like in the future, to make sure that we get that restaurant or, I would rather not have other entities there, but restaurant serving alcohol to me is obviously we want growth in Morgan. And so we understand that. And we want to work with you on that if you allow us to be on this location.
Okay.
So
Anything else?
one more question. So how do we talk about leaving parking as an option? Because I agree that's probably the first thing you'd run into is you just overwhelm commercial street. So how open-ended can we leave it?
Well, I think as what you could say is if parking becomes an issue,
Who decides that issue though?
Well, if I can mention talking about parking, I would be more concerned with the building occupancy than parking, especially if they're big things on Friday, Sunday afternoon. I'm the one who Sunday afternoon is going to be over there half an hour before, making sure commercial streets plowed. On a Sunday afternoon, there is rarely anybody there. Some people are going to have to walk. I don't think it's the parking that'll limit them. I think it's more what can we safely have in this. They get 300 people. I don't know what parts of this building you're going to occupy. I've been in most of it. 300 people, you're probably going to be sitting on each other's laps. But I don't think the parking is going to be the issue.
well, then maybe you don't worry too much about it. And the
we-
fire marshal though,
So
I don't think we need to say anything about,
to base this on the building occupancy, could we do a motion for that based on building occupancy where we don't know what that is?
based on recommendation by the fire
Fire
marshal.
marshal. So if it gets to where they're worried it's becoming a problem or anyone's worried it's becoming a problem, that occupancy could be decided at that time and you've met your occupancy, we need to revisit this. We don't need to know that right now then. Okay.
Okay.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Oh, am I on? Okay. Just so you're aware, and I know this maybe doesn't play into this decision today, but there are future plans in the building. Our future plan is to put an elevator in that will increase accessibility all throughout the building. We hope to have that done within a couple of years. Also, the same gentleman that owns this building owns the vacant lot between the laundromat and the hotel. He will also be developing that within a couple of years, and there will be increased parking and accessibility for not only the buildings that are located on that lot, but surrounding buildings such as this one. So just so you know, that is where we're going, what we hope to accomplish. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, ready to entertain a motion for the Grace Fellowship Church. As applied for conditional use permit to lease the building at 101 and 103 Commercial Street. This property is located in a central commercial zone in the historic overlay. It's classified in the table 4-2, section 10.16.160 of Morgan City. The church is allowed as conditional use in this zone. There are several factors to take into consideration. It's the parking, alcohol, distance to alcohol establishments, use restrictions of each floor, and the impacts this would use and mitigating conditions to be applied. Also address parking and occupation of the occupants on Sundays. So somebody have fun with that one. Anybody want to entertain that?
I can make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I motion that we grant the conditional use permit for conditional use permit of a church located at 101 Commercial Street, also known as the Grace Fellowship Church, conditional on the occupancy level recommended or required by the fire marshal. And get permission to park on the street.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second it. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
I'm struggling a little bit. I love what they do and want to be supportive of that. But just a few minutes ago, we talked about being business friendly. And we definitely don't want to keep any restaurants from being able to come in to Commercial Street. So we've sort of thrown out, hey, we could address that at a future point. Are we going to address that? Are we deciding in granting this conditional use permit, are we deciding as a commission that we're going to rezone that area to avoid any future problems?
That just give me a thought too.
And again, that will have to be at a future meeting. You cannot limit this application based on those concerns.
Yeah. Okay, you answered it, Steve. It's been proposed in second. Can we have a vote? Everybody that says aye.
What hand?
Hmm?
What hand do I? Okay.
Oh, I don't know. Hands.
Aye.
We got 5-1 in favor.
You should ask for those opposed as well.
Do what?
Ask for those opposed.
Asking for those who opposed.
Yeah, who want to vote
Opposing
no.
vote.
Finish the vote.
Say that again.
Just finish the vote. We call for those in favor, now you gotta call for those opposed.
Oh, sorry. All those opposed?
Yeah, one in
Oh,
favor.
oh, okay. So it passes 4-2 in favor.
And for discussion purposes, we should make a note that maybe that's something that the city should keep that in mind and maybe look at that right away. And maybe we ask the mayor to also take a look at that to see. Sounds like you had something happening that you were already looking at the alcohol license issue. And so that's and maybe I'm gonna reach out to Steve and see if Steve, maybe at our next month meeting, he could report back to teach us what the state code allows in terms of what that flexibility looks like. That's okay. That's my recommendation to the planning commission is we put it on as a short item in November in terms of what does the state code tell us we can do with that license.
And then with permission of the chair, maybe just a quick training moment on what I said about limiting this application, unless you want to set that for another time.
Yeah. Yeah, let's, if you got time, let's do it.
Okay, so just really quick for the commissioners, and I know that your concern is you didn't want to limit future business opportunities along there with the potential liquor restrictions. One thing that we always have to remember is that as soon as someone makes an application, they've filed a completed application like this conditional use permit application. As soon as they have filed that, then everything that's in our city code is frozen. They're vested in what is currently on the books. And so that means that a conditional use permit is allowed in this location regardless of the surrounding uses and regardless of the future potential. So basically what that means is that past planning commissions have looked at that and considered that this would be an okay way to go. That doesn't restrict you in the future. Now that you've seen this issue, it gives you the opportunity to revisit your ordinance and say, okay, yeah, we're business friendly. We want these conditional uses to come in here, but we don't want them to limit the future possibilities of their neighbors. And so then you can again look at that and say, you know what, maybe it's not good to have a church as a conditional use in the middle of a restaurant district. And so let's take that out as a conditional use in that area because we don't want to limit that potential growth. And so as you change those rules, that's fine. But you, again, back to the initial rule is when they file that application, the ordinances that are in place, they're vested in those. Does that make sense?
Tony?
Hey, Steve, this is Tony.
You're going to have to get closer to a mic, please.
So, hey, Steve, this is Tony. So let's play this out. So let's say hypothetically that 2 or 3 years down the road, we have an application for a restaurant within this 600 feet that, and they want to serve alcohol. So are you saying at that time we could entertain having that business 600 feet from the church and then going and changing our ordinance that no longer allows that? And then, so what do you do with the church at this point? Do you boot them out, or are they grandfathered in, or how does that work?
Yes. So, well, you kind of asked two questions there. No, the church would never be booted out. They're vested as to where they are. But let's say that next month you decided that you were going to reduce that restriction if state law allowed it, and that you said maybe alcohol sales are only going to be 100 feet away. And so then in the future, when a business comes and they're more than 100 feet away, then they can come in.
We could trump that state statute?
That's what I said, if state law allowed you to do that. And that's something that, like Jake alluded to, is something I'm gonna have to look at. I know we have some flexibility. I just don't know how much they have given us. But just for example, if the state allowed us to do that, then yeah, next month we could go through the process and amend our ordinance so that other businesses could be located closer. Or on the other hand, like you said, you could say, you know what, the state won't let us do that. And so we don't want to perpetuate this problem. And so we're going to remove churches as conditional uses in the middle of our central business district. And then obviously this church would be grandfathered in. And as they grew, and if they had to relocate somewhere else, they could not relocate within the central business district, nor could any other church come into that area. Does that make sense?
It does.
Obviously, I'm not being clear enough.
No, you are. I'm just wondering if what we did here tonight, I guess what I don't like is the state may or may not let you change the statute. That's kind of where I'm stuck at. But
really, as far as tonight goes, the way that your current ordinance is put together, you actually did not have a choice. The only way that you could have said no to this church is if there were conditions or impacts on surrounding areas, surrounding existing businesses that could not be mitigated by the imposition of any conditions. That is the only way that you could have turned it down. You could not have turned it down because of something that might happen in the future as far as eliminating potential businesses.
So it sounds like we need to do some homework and see, get a little bit ahead of this, because this is one of our main business districts. We need to make sure that we know our options before it hits us again. I hate to wait till that time. Is that something that we can throw back on staff to go through some research?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's
Just
why
to
we're
let you
here.
know- oh, So, Chair,
Yes.
just letting you know, Josh Goodman is our building inspector and a building official. He's the one that is inspected and was referred to when Laura Orr talked about a meeting. He says just doing it on a piece of paper. Normally what happens as an occupancy limitation is based on square footage and exits. And so, for example, he said this is very rough, so we're not going to take this as word. If there was an 80 congregation of 80 people, it would need 2 exits, which that building does currently have, and a square footage of 560 square feet. Could have 80 people. So we'd have, him and the fire marshal will be going in there, seeing how big the square footage is. And then we could tell you what that maximum amount could be in that main area, so. Yeah, and we can have that done at that time. I know that when we were reviewing the Vallis Hotel, that will happen as well. In our discussions when they were applying for their building permit, we'll have those signs. So that would be not an uncommon thing to do over here at this building as well.
So Jake, I know this would be a lot of work for you and Mayor. And somebody brought up something comes to us and then Tony's like, do we really want this? And Steve says, well, we're kind of locked in because state code. Could we get out ahead of it and go, okay, this building is code fits this, but not this. And so change the code so that we don't have, because I was torn tonight too on, this seems so open-ended and so, are we doing it because they're nice guys? And the control factor of it's the, trust system, how many people they have in there. And it seems like we're right on the line on this thing a lot tonight. But it sounds like we didn't really have that much of a choice because it's part of the thing. But could we look at that commercial street, Jake, and say, we need to change this and this and this in this area for the future?
Yes, and we have had a different but similar discussion earlier in the spring, just after I started, where we talked about going through all of the uses and the zones and kind of revisiting that. And as Steve has suggested, it's best practices that for some things to just make them permitted uses and other things, and maybe in this case, remove it. So that is something that is on our to-do list as well. We just have a limited bandwidth because of meeting once a month and general plan and other items. But this is something we could move up the priority list.
Because what we don't know is how many people maybe want to put something in Morgan. And they look and see what the zoning is and things like that. And they make a decision before we even know that they're thinking about coming here. They look and go, you know what, I've rode this horse before. I'm not gonna fight this fight. It's the zoning is I'm gonna fight this. It's just not worth it. And they move on to a different place. And we'll never know. Those are trying to figure out the negative, but we don't want to eliminate those things too.
I think that does happen, but also Teresa probably fields a lot of calls where people just, A, they're too lazy to look at the ordinance, or B, they know that ordinances, there's always different parts of a city ordinance, something may apply in one area, but not the other area. I like to double check things with cities as well.
On that, we've been really being more proactive on having an image of the city that is, come approach us. We'd like to work with you as a group, et cetera. Yeah, people, I could tell you I get calls constantly. You wouldn't believe how many people have come in to ask plenty of questions. And so, we haven't had anybody that's come in and called and says, well, Morgan City is just so limited. I don't ever want to be there. They come in and say, hey, I'm interested. Tell me what you got. And so we really work with them to accommodate and still meet the code and its requirements instead of having a no attitude right off the bat. So.
And so answers, yes, we could do that and at the planning commission discretion, that's something that we could probably take on within 3 months in terms of looking at it. Planning commission would make a recommendation, then we'd take that to the city council, who would adopt the updated ordinance as to the uses. One thing to keep in mind, though, that ordinances always are a work in progress. Every city should be working on their ordinances, refining, updating, listening, researching, debating, making changes. And if they're not, then they're becoming stagnant. And so, yes.
So, Mr. Chair, can I see if I got this right in my head? Sure. Steve, listen close. They're granddaddied in with this. And therefore, if we change the distance for somebody to serve alcohol, it wouldn't affect them because they were grandfathered in.
Correct.
So that's a possibility that if a business wants to come and serve alcohol, that they're already in and it's okay if the planning commission changes the ordinance. It won't affect them. So that's why I said what I said. Not wanting to ever limit a business from coming in because of that ordinance. So that's why I was defending Grace Church. The other thing that I thought about is if that new restaurant, new whatever comes in and they're serving alcohol, if they would actually be a Sunday business. I know that doesn't matter, but it might not be too good. Maybe it, I see lots of stores are busy on Sunday, so. But that's why I said what I said is they're granddaddied in now. And then if we change the ordinance, we don't have to kick them out. And the restaurant can come. Is that correct, Steve?
If the state law allows us to change the ordinance as you've described, you're correct.
Thank you.
And just a little history on, a little history on Commercial Street, just so you're aware, because the anxiety of having this limitation on any type of restaurant. On Commercial Street, the owner of this building owns probably 75% of the undeveloped lots, except for one, and he also owns the current restaurant. So if he's allowing this application to come in, he's aware of what he's limited his potential development for. So just let you know that he owns behind Commercial Street and also in front of the hotel, the restaurant that's currently doing smoking box car, and then this building as well. So just to let you know.
Mr. Chair, if I could be excused, I've got to get to another meeting.
Of course, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
We got anything else?
Should we go back to plan, general plan discussion and finish the economic chapter?
Sure.
I'm gonna bring it up here. And, I did find this. You want to do a Google search for Utah licenses, but I don't want to spend more time on that. We want to get back to the general plan. Okay, so we're back to the economic. And
You just keep walking.
I'll log into Zoom.
there we go. Okay, all right. And any discussion on the retail sales leakage analysis?
One question. On that. The item under the motor vehicles. That the online sales are now on.
Yes. Yeah. Y- Yes. And so I think this means Morgan residents are buying more online. Yeah. The vehicles, motor vehicles? Oh, absolutely. That's a lot of money. I don't know the numbers. It's a lot of money. You pay, was it 6 I don't know what your percentage is, 6.7, 6.9 sales tax, and a portion of that comes in, and vehicles aren't cheap. That would probably be under motor vehicle. Your ATVs. Yeah,
Yeah, and
they're a cash cow for the city.
yeah, and to tell you, when young Ford bought the Polaris dealership and moved their sales building to the young Chrysler Jeep Dodge, now the city gets the tax base instead of the county.
Oh,
So that was a good move. They're still using the shop, but now their sales base.
the
is
point of sale.
Point of sale is
It's
there.
all about point of sale. But if they come here for, yep, absolutely. And from your geolocation. So if you're at home, it comes to Morgan. If you're on your phone, well, then Layton, then it goes to Layton.
And I talked. a couple buddies selling and that we're 0.5% lower than Layton. And they have so many people that come up here. Well, when Ford had trucks to sell, but they come up here because 0.25% on 80,000-90,000. That's a lot of money and,
Yeah.
and that's a big selling tool for them salesmen over there. So, yeah, that's giving something to get something there.
I just found out my wife is a great contributor to our.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on the leakage? Yeah. Okay, employment,
Like the restaurant.
There.
Cobblestone. That's a higher tax. rate.
yeah,
Well, there,
that,
there are different levels,
tourism.
there are different levels of food tax. You go to Ridley's and buy, not every food item is charged the same sales tax. There's different rates based on what the product is from a grocery store, a deli, at different rates.
I know you pay your property taxes on your vehicles here. It comes here. If you leave, paying in Weaver County, it's there. So it's important to get that kind of word out. Or if you send it off in the mail, you want to have it more than postal.
I think that just maybe goes to your shop local. I added the comment of having a shop local campaign and most people don't understand how that all works, right? It's a little confusing and it's not common knowledge but it's something the local businesses would, right? They're going to benefit the most and the city will benefit second and everybody here will benefit. All boats rise with the tide. I had a question here is Morgan City, okay, not having big or mid box. I mean, is there a desire to have, so big box is like Walmart, mid box is like Old Navy or something, like in terms of building size, or the neighborhood Walmart. You've seen the green one on Washington and Ogden. To me, there is a scale issue here, but also you just don't have a lot of good frontages now. A developer could always acquire land, multiple homes or whatever, but there's also a scale there. And there is that people like Morgan because it feels hometown, small town, and big box is not. Brigham City is not a big city, but with Walmart and all of that, it makes it feel different. And
Like the mayor said, they need so many rooftops before they could even consider moving up here.
they do, yeah,
Family Dollar.
yep, mid box. Ridley's a mid. Yeah, and so I just want to ask, is mid box appropriate in Morgan? And maybe that's something you put in the general plan. You know, it doesn't mean you would say no if a big box showed up and you decided to make it happen, but it does kind of put a philosophy in the plan.
So do you decide it by
So
square
per-
footage? That way.
No, it's just a terminology. You'd say Morgan City promotes small business and mid box when appropriate.
I just went through.
Yeah, that's before. Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note here. Morgan promotes small business and mid box. Are they okay with Tractor Supply? And so that would be mid box is appropriate then. Okay, I'm making a note here then, not interested in big box, and a general plan is a place to say that
Unless it's.
I don't know, geez,
he has a big box. You're looking at Gosner's cheese in Cache Valley. I mean, that's a menu. No, no, that would be mid-box. The Beaver one, yeah.
You know, and comment, I get a lot of people come in my store and just because I'm locally owned. And they'll say, I don't want to go to the malls. I don't want to go to the big jewelry stores. I go online and to find a local guy. And Layton City promotes local businesses really well. You know, that they have a landing page especially with Hillfield and all that. And so, yeah, I think Morgan, we need to stay the idea of keeping it small, but more variety and more of it. You know, I don't think we need Costco and Walmart. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and okay, and I added that, and I'm gonna add one other thing later on. Or find a place for, actually, I think it goes here.
Those companies are killers. They killed small businesses. That's
They do
they
actually,
they
Walmart.
come in, they don't want to be your friend. They come in to kill you and move you aside because they want all the business, and that's just not good for our community, in my opinion.
So one additional is with Ty and Teresa, we've talked about
Yeah, for sure.
doing a downtown master plan, a little bit more detailed, and a code update both together. And we put in for a grant on that. It won't find out for about 6 months. Teresa put in for that. But that could be one of the goals as well, is a downtown specific plan. You have kind of this high level general plan and you've got the historic overlay, but Morgan City does not have a more detailed downtown plan. And so that's also one of the recommendations as we've talked about economy stuff. And thoughts on that?
Yeah, I
And
was just
agree.
thinking, I went to Logan to one of Denise's conferences. She invited me to come up, have dinner and stuff, and she stayed in a hotel. And it was by the river there in Logan.
Riverwoods area.
And just, it was so nice. And there was a place out in the hotel with a big fire pit and the river's there, and you could walk to all these different things. And that would be a wonderful thing to kind of get an idea for our downtown, to make it, we got so many cool things here, but to get it started and get something going like that, would be awesome.
Okay, make a note of that. Tie river and economic development together. I've been there, the Riverwoods,
Yeah, it's nice,
the,
huh?
the Marriott and all that,
Really, I mean, it's landscape nice.
the elements.
And you know what? Like Denise's conferences she goes to, I think that's one of the things that they don't care if they have the amenities and it's a nice place, that like their group, they go to all different kinds of places. It's a nice thing. And that's kind of a starting of what we're trying to draw people here, I think.
Maybe a hotel with the small conference facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never gonna get a big conference, but maybe something that's bringing in 50 or 100 people.
Yeah.
Most of the planning conferences that I go to, Teresa goes to the same ones, it's 100 people. It's not,
Mhm.
you know, they would love a place like this that's cool and not the big city.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. You have fast internet. Okay, so we're leaving leakage and employment. Any comments on the employment page? This kind of lists your numbers here. Morgan City employment. So it does look like you've had some nominal growth, you know, on some this one, look at this, between 2010 and 2019, You had a big increase from 42 in the professional to 183. I think that's pretty considerable. Also your recreation bumped up a little bit or doubled 66 to 104. That's the average. The bottom line is the yearly increase. So professional and recreation are two. I don't know what information. I guess that's probably technology. There's probably an increase there. Any suggestions on things that we have not discussed yet that could promote local business that the city could do?
Well, I think the very fact that we are not going to allow big boxes in the city would be a good reason to, when people come here to small business, a small business, they say, hey, I haven't got to worry about that competition. I mean, that's an advantage. Like, hey, come to Morgan, you haven't got to compete with Walmart next door or Costco.
Yeah, that's good. There is the risk it could always go to the county, but that's something you can't control. But again, you don't have the interchanges. I mean, the river one down by Peterson, there's just not the population to make that happen. So, but that is a great point, the promoting the small local business. And the jobs you get at Walmart are not good in terms of, the manager probably makes okay, but after that, they're not family supporting jobs. Okay, moving on to community feedback and opportunities. Needs and opportunities, talking about tourism. Wasatch Peaks Ranch, we did talk about that. That's going to bring in some jobs. Natural and infrastructure limitations. And then here's the recommendation. Increase tax base. I think, and I'll add some of the other things that we've done here. Okay, I think we have just a couple more pages on the economic chapter. Become a marketable destination. I think that's what Justin was talking about, that Morgan Valley. So Morgan City working with Morgan Valley. That you really need each other. Morgan City has the services, but Morgan Valley has the recreation. And then the number 2, where economic development can occur, get it right. So we talked about replacing commercial, clustered commercial node to promoting downtown. It's kind of the language we're talking about.
You also got the word retail clusters in that same paragraph.
Properly scaled economic development. Yep, wrong header right there. On this one, I didn't think this was necessary in a general plan, but because you'll look at it, the only type of center that applies is a neighborhood. So we could leave this or take it out, or yeah. Maybe just the emphasis that the neighborhood is what applies, which actually is already in here. This is a good spot to say Morgan City's not interested in big box, and it's also not appropriate.
It's Jake, there's some good wording there. That it doesn't sound. We're inviting, but just not the monsters to move in.
Yeah. Promoting small and medium scale locally owned businesses. So in that case, you're not saying what you don't want, you're saying what you do want. Unless you want to say we don't want.
Can you, would it be or put locally owned business feel? So you're not eliminating, I don't know. I don't know, you know the wording better.
Well, businesses are still gonna try if they think Morgan's a great place, you know, if it's a chain or whatever. I mean, look at McDonald's. I don't know who's building the McDonald's. It's probably not a local person who will be the owner. Well, the owner operator, because the franchise will own the building and it's a corporate own. Oh, that's what they're gonna do. Okay. Yeah, that's a little different. I had a uncle that owned a bunch of McDonald's, the Park City one and other ones. Yeah, his kid's now on the Culvers, which I told them after I told my cousin, I said, Morgan City wants a Culvers. He just laughed. Yeah, we didn't get into that details. Okay, let's see. I think, is that it?
You already know it on the top, that table's got the wrong title. on it.
Yeah, I've got it marked here already.
One thing I bet you we're gonna see with McDonald's moving in here, other businesses look like, well, McDonald's done all the legwork. They've looked at all the numbers. If
Yeah.
they can
If
survive,
they're there.
then there must be enough for a business. I'll bet you it's going to really push something in our city.
I think they're just pulling off the freeway.
Yeah, the freeway, but that's where the business is.
Mhm.
Easy on, easy off.
Yes. Busy freeway. It's in between.
There's nothing between Evanston and Auburn,
True.
other than Taggart, but that's why they're built, there's nothing there between those two places. They've done their homework.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Taco time and. Crazy busy, just in phase.
Yeah.
It was always good.
Yeah.
Always.
Okay, that is it on the economic. Should we save environment for next month? Okay.
I'm with you on that one. Well finished, Jake.
Chair, I'll turn the time back to you.
Anybody got anything else? Meeting is adjourned.
Good job.
It was a train wreck, but that's all you got.
You did great.